Okay, we're about to go live now.
All right, we'll give it like one more minute and then I'll get started. All right, here we go. Good afternoon. My name is Jason DeLeon. I am the director of the Undocumented Migration Project and head curator of the global exhibition Hostile Terrain 94. I'm also the host of the Undocumented Migration Project webinar, and this is episode number 3. We want to welcome our viewers. We hope that you are all staying safe and sane during these trying times, and we are thrilled to have you with us today. I'm also thrilled to have two of my partners in crime, Alvaro Morales and Alex Suber, who are going to talk to us today about the virtual experience that we are launching this afternoon as part of Hostile Terrain 94. I'm going to turn it over to these two fine gentlemen who will give us some background on the exhibition, on both the virtual, and then I will talk a little bit about the physical. And then we're going to open it up to a discussion amongst the three of us around both this entire project, the logic, the ethics of it, and many other related issues. And we will also be taking live questions from our audience. So if you are interested in participating in the conversation, you can submit questions either via our Facebook live stream, or actually, no, submit them all via our Facebook live stream. And we have someone there who will be curating those questions and passing those along to us. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to these two fine young men.
Thanks, Jason. It's been a fun ride. My name is Alex Suber. I'm a co-director of the Hostile Terrain 94 virtual exhibition.
Hi, everyone. Alvaro Morales. Really excited for you all to be here and excited to get to the Q&A after a brief presentation.
So we're going to do a quick kind of behind the scenes and a preview and go through a little bit of the experience and sneak peek. And at the end, we're going to actually send the code across and have a QR code you can scan and do the experience on your own phone. But in the meantime, I'll just kick it off and give you a little background. We started this project with the conviction that the objects that Jason and his team had been collecting for a decade could tell us a lot more about the lived experience and the journey and the destinations of migrants crossing the US-Mexico border. And beyond that, engaging people with these objects in immersive and interactive ways could tell the story, and it could be kind of a hook into the lives of migrants and other stakeholders in the Sonoran Desert. We could really explore the topic of the humanitarian crisis there through the work and a collaboration with the Undocumented Migration Project. Sorry about that. Oh. Alvaro, you wanna take it away? Just gotta pull this up quickly.
Yeah, so while you pull it up, I think we wanted Jason to give a quick overview about what the actual physical installation is like, and then we'll go back to talking about what our digital layer kind of added to that.
Cool. So Hostile Terrain 94 is a global participatory exhibition that is designed to raise awareness about the thousands of people who have died and gone missing along the U.S.-Mexico border, particularly in the Sonora Desert of Arizona, since the mid-1990s, as a direct result of the U.S. Federal border policy known as Prevention Through Deterrence. The structure of Hostile Terrain 94 is basically a giant wall map of the U.S.-Mexico border that is populated with about 3,400 handwritten toe tags representing the human remains that have been recovered along that part of the border. Here you can see images of the exhibition. The orange tags represent individuals who are unidentified, and the manila tags represent those who have been named. It's about 1,200 unidentified bodies and about 2,200 named bodies. And so the physical part of this exhibition involves hosting partners around the globe, and we're estimating over 130 hosting partners between now and probably the end of 2021 who will be launching these shows on 6 continents. And what these folks are doing is they have received exhibition kits, so all the information that goes on the toe tags themselves, the pins that are needed to mount them, the wall graphics, et cetera, and then our hosting partners, whether they're universities, churches, nonprofits, art galleries, they then assemble members of their community, so between dozens to thousands of people per location who come together, fill out these toe tags, and then mount them on these wall maps in the exact location of where those individuals were found. And so the idea is that through the physical engagement with the wall, people can both bear witness to this issue personally through the writing out of the names, but also they can help really breathe life into what's essentially an Excel spreadsheet. And so that's part of that's the kind of gist of the physical exhibitions that are happening. And as you'll notice here on this toe tag in this slide, it has a QR code. And so we had been very interested in the beginning about how to add additional kinds of layers to this exhibition, especially in terms of audio and video, which is where Alvaro and Alex come into play here. And I will just say that that our relationship, the Undocumented Migration Project with these two, really just came out of conversations initially with Alvaro about the work that he had been doing, the kind of VR stuff he had been doing on migration, his interest in digital media around these sorts of issues, and we were so impressed by the work that he had done prior to this project that we thought that there was a lot of potential for he and Alex to add these, I think, really important and meaningful digital layers that allow the viewer not just to sort of write out the names of the dead, but also to hear the stories of people who have crossed the border and to hear about those who have lost their lives. And so their contribution to this project has really been phenomenal, and really just adds a real sort of direct human touch in terms of forefronting the voices of those individuals who are experiencing directly these traumatic border crossings. And so I'll pass it on now to you guys so that you can talk about some of the details.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, we were thinking about it earlier today that this started about a little over 2 years ago with just reaching out and then meeting for the first time at the first kind of prototype that you hosted for Hostile Terrain, the actual physical exhibits. Definitely, I was intrigued by your work in that you also brought life to kind of these objects that may have not had any meaning for just a distant observer, but you used the objects as the hook for the storytelling. And in that initial prototype of this exhibit, it was just red dots along the border instead of the toe tags. That was really powerful and intense because you could see just like the mass of what was going on. But then you zoomed in and got even more personal by filling out the toe tags and including the names and like you said, bringing that Excel file to life. And with this digital layer, we're trying to kind of go a bit deeper into some of those stories. So we interview some migrants that recount their experience in the desert, as well as some folks that have been involved with humanitarian efforts there. And we'd like to just go ahead and show you a quick intro of the experience, and then we'll talk about some of the components that that make it up.
Great. So we'll play a video of the introduction of the experience.
Carmita Maricela Zaguipuya, age 31 years old. Reporting date July 2nd, 2012. Cause of death, exposure. Hostile Terrain 94 is a global exhibition memorializing the more than 3,000 migrants who have lost their lives crossing the Sonora Desert of Arizona since 1994. This contested landscape holds clues to the complicated and often violent process of human migration. The journeys, the struggles, and the increasingly weaponized nature of the US-Mexico border. In this experience, you'll be transported to the desert and hear firsthand accounts from witnesses to this silent crisis on the border. Use the map to navigate their stories. Tap any location to begin.
So as you saw there, it starts with a video intro, and you can see the kind of dialogue starting to form between the installation and the interactive web documentary. Just for context, that's just actually a hyperlink, which we'll send you at the end. You'll be able to go through the different chapters there, but it all runs in your browser. Originally, we had chosen to do an augmented reality experience proper, where you're using your phone and your camera of your phone as sort of a pass-through onto the actual installation. And we were opening these portals, these kind of windows behind the installation into the desert. And the experience would take place when you visited the actual installation. There would be much more of a tie to the app and you having to be there. But because of the pandemic, as many things did, we took a bit of a pivot and a turn and wanted to make sure that regardless of whether you were able to visit or travel to a library or museum or a college to see this installation, you could actually just pull it up on your phone and kind of navigate the stories at your own ease and leisure. And so I think that actually allowed us to kind of reach you here today and be able to launch this in a way that's really accessible and still has some of the impact, and we're able to kind of tie that together. So I'll turn it to Alvaro to talk about some of the story components and what we ended up with, and then we'll show you another video of a sample chapter.
Yeah, so to continue to go under the hood, over the past 18 months, we've had a lot of interviews that we ended up cutting up and putting into each of these 5 chapters. And the experience is kind of twofold. The audio drives the narrative, but you use your cell phone and tapping to kind of trigger the audio. So first, you click on one of the red dots and you enter into various settings in the Sonoran Desert, where you can use your cell phone as a sort of a magic window into these panoramas. And once there, you'll see interviews or personal archives with interviews playing over them. And you'll also see kind of like hologram-like videos. This second picture on the PowerPoint slide is one of the ways that we captured this volumetric video. And mostly we ended up using a tool called DepthKit. And you'll see that in the next chapter. And we also have the 3D models of 3D recreations of real life items. So for example, this the third photo or kind of GIF at the bottom of the PowerPoint slide is a 3D recreation of a shrine. And at the beginning, you saw not a photo of a real life a backpack, but rather a still frame of a 3D recreation of one of those backpacks. So yeah, just make sure once you're in the experience to move your phone around and tap and drag and explore. So why don't we go ahead and just show one of the chapters so you have a better idea of what they look like.
My name is Magda Mankel. I was born in Nogales, Arizona, but raised mostly in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm currently a doctoral student at the University of Maryland, College Park. I mean, the desert is incredibly harsh. It is hot. It is rough terrain. There's plants everywhere that want to poke you. There's also animals and other wildlife that is ready to attack and strike if they feel threatened. So you're really up against the elements when you're out there. There's not much water, if any. People have crossed in this area because, yes, it's hard, but also for a while there was less surveillance. You could cross and avoid detection. That was the positive point of crossing in these areas. There's places to hide, it's remote, it's hard to access, but over time, surveillance has increased. But even with that surveillance, there's still lots of little areas that you can move around in. So it's really created this like cat and mouse game. So here in southern Arizona, we're surrounded by mountains. And what this creates is like this really jagged environment and this valley that is incredibly lush and green. But these plants have adapted to be like pokey and sticky. There's also a lot of arroyos and canyons that are full of jagged rocks. Just going through that rock and that heavy sand is really hard and it really slows you down. Sometimes people walk a couple of hours and then they're picked up. Sometimes they walk days, and sometimes people will walk as much as like a week or a little more. The journeys vary, but those journeys are always incredibly hard due to the environment that they take place in.
So that was one of 5 different chapters or episodes that you can experience by clicking those different pins on the map. And Magda does a great job of just unveiling some of the meaning of the objects and what they might have been through. We definitely want to thank our Kickstarter supporters. We couldn't have done it without them. I know some of them are on here, so thanks a ton. We couldn't have distributed this as widely as we did. We used a lot of different tools and had an incredible team behind us, including the UMP, Jason, his team, Austin, Nicole, Gabe, Mike Wells, and our developer, Shar Styles, who I think is here, and Nathan Miller, who made the music, Gabby, who did a lot of the vocals and humming on the music. There's just an incredible team of really passionate people who made this thing happen. So without further ado, we're gonna have a little Q&A discussion, but want to make sure you get the chance to experience it for yourself. A video doesn't really do it justice because it is truly interactive. So if you hold your smartphone camera up to the QR code, or you just type in that link that's at the bottom, it should take you to the appropriate browser. And we'd love to hear your feedback and any questions now as well.
And we've also posted the this code is on the Facebook discussion associated with the live stream, so people can either click on the link there or they can scan it here. And one of the things I want to just say, I'm looking at some of the comments right now on Facebook. One from Alberta, who's talking about how her class just finished Land of Open Graves. I think for me, one of the many cool things about this project is that for those that have read Land of Open Graves, which is my first book, you can actually meet a lot of the characters that are in the book. So Bob Key, who is one of the humanitarians who is described in part one of the book, when we find some skeletonized human remains, you can listen to Bob Key talk about finding this particular person here that's represented by this cross. The person that I call Memo, you can hear him talk about his border crossing experiences in one of the chapters, and you can also hear from Fernando, who in the book is someone that I refer to as Christian, talking about his own experiences and his relationship to Maricela, whose body we unfortunately found in the summer of 2012. So for folks out there who are looking to connect the book to other materials, I think that this is a really nice complementary piece to really show people the desert up close, to allow them to see stuff in 3D, but then also really to hear directly from many of the people who are featured in that work.
Jason, and I'll quickly add to that in that one of the objectives behind using 360 photos and kind of the magic window into these environments is that we've really wanted to replicate for people what it was like to actually be there and look out to the terrain and the endless mountains, which we definitely got through your book, but actually being there and just seeing the horizon with truly like endless mountains kind of brought home the point that this is a really incredible journey and an odyssey.
Absolutely. I'm gonna kind of simultaneously field questions and ask you guys my own questions. So this is a question from Craig Goralski. Goralski asks, the location I clicked on looked to be a rest point. Are all of the hotspots on the site rest points, provisioning points, shrines, or have you included locations where human remains have been found? Yeah, it's a mix. So what you're seeing on those maps are locations of where human remains were found, as well as locations where we found migrant materials, and some of the stuff that's shown in 3D are things that were taken in situ, by these guys.
Yeah, so just to piggyback on that, we chose like 5 different locations that represent diverse aspects of the journey in some sense, or diverse stakeholders. So, there's a story of a migrant who crossed Memo. There's a story of Bob and Magda, who are more doing humanitarian work. And then each of the objects kind of is chosen as a way to highlight a different aspect of the story. So you'll see rest points in there. You'll see the shrine if you continue. And then, the collection of them should give you a kind of mosaic of that region. So yeah.
And so maybe just to kind of start this conversation amongst the three of us, I was wondering if you guys could talk a bit about what some of the biggest challenges have been for this project for the two of you.
Been so many. Alex, you can start with one and then I'll come up with another one.
Cool. So one of the biggest challenges has been how to make this more than just a flat documentary, more than just a photo, more than just what you see in the installation, and really create more layers of content and story, but using the right amount of technology. So I think early on we had really taken on an ambitious project and wanted to kind of do it all. And we found that it was overwhelming for the user and took away from the story. And it was difficult to balance like being present at the installation and also, having this extra information kind of in synergy with it. So we went through a lot of prototyping, a lot of, dead ends or kind of formats where we pulled back. And so that was just a challenge of learning, when the technology is serving you and then when the technology is taking away from people digesting the content. And so we just went through a lot of iterations, and I think that's, you know, a normal thing with new technology. Got to get over the shiny toy factor, but just that process was definitely a challenge.
And my answer is very similar to that. It's along the lines of technology. There's a trade-off in our trying to make it very accessible. There's some pitfalls to that. So for one, we're really happy that anyone with a cell phone can experience this, and you don't have to be at the exhibit. You don't have to download an app. It helps if you have Wi-Fi, but whatever web browser you typically use to surf the web, like you'll be able to experience this. On the flip side to that is this technology is not built for what we did with it. So there are many bugs along the way, and the actual developing took a long time. And if you run into any issues, just reload or just bear with us, or even let us know, because again, like this technology isn't built for what we're doing with it. So we're definitely at the cutting edge, and sometimes at the cutting edge, you get cut.
What are you like? What do you? I think it's. I mean, we've come so far in just a few years in terms of this technology. I mean, I'm just even thinking back to, you know, when this project began in 2009, we were just kind of starting to have conversations about like 3D objects, and you know, and at that point it was very costly to do. What do you like? What do you like in a year from now? Like it seems like this technology is growing so quickly, and I'm just wondering if you could maybe talk about what you think the sort of next sort of steps would happen with this type of technology, with an experience like this. Like, what do you see kind of as the next kind of step?
I have one idea. So it's so true that 3D scanning technology and generally like kind of immersive technology has just come a long way. Most of it's on your phone. And an idea we had early on for the project creatively was at the end to allow users to actually scan their own object, something that maybe is like from their past or their family heirloom, like, or just something that you know, kind of is like a token for them, to a story of their immigration or whatnot, and then add that into the world. So at the very end, it'd be sort of like a collection of all these different stories that were generated by the actual users. And we wanted to do that just with your phone 2 years ago, you know, just walking around an object, we create a 3D model of it, and then it lives in this world, and it's sort of generative. And 2 years ago, that definitely wasn't possible. Today, it would still be very hard, but there are LiDAR scanners now on newer iPhones. Androids as well have like amazing computing capabilities to generate meshes and models. So I think the idea that, you know, not only are you like interacting with the application by clicking, you can actually like upload and add to an experience, and that kind of world collectively is created by the different end users, which is a really exciting thing and something that is just becoming possible in a lot of ways.
I'm gonna field some questions here. This is one from, I believe, Catherine Garcia. She is asking about how you decided which objects to include in this particular experience.
It was mostly based on the interviews. So we tried to link the objects to whatever folks were talking about. So for example, in that chapter that we played, it was Magda talking about a kind of predator-prey relationship. And I think that backpack really highlights that. It's a camo backpack, and that should give a lot of people kind of like this light bulb moment, and make them think about themselves putting on a camo backpack. Like, why do you have to wear camo, and what does that mean for the journey that you're about to take? So yeah, mostly based on the interviews. And yeah, anything you want to add to that, Alex?
No, I mean, there's another question about storyboarding, which is very kind of related to this. And I would just say, you know, as with all documentaries, but especially with this one, we had to be really flexible. So we kind of had to put the cart before the horse a lot of times and scan a lot of objects. We had way more objects than we actually included. And then when we were in the field, you know, near the border and talking with folks, we were just letting them surface their stories and use their own words to really convey their perspective. And then we kind of reverse engineered it and then found moments in the audio that you know highlighted or connected to a shoe or a hat or you know blanket. So we just had to be really flexible on kind of how we constructed that story, and a lot of it just happens in the edit. You can't plan for that type of thing.
Do you guys want to talk about the mapping components and the GIS kind of layering?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify that the objects that are included in each one of the chapters, they're not necessarily objects that were found in that location. The objects are just from the inventory from the UMP. It's saved for Maricela's shrine. There we do take you to a specific 360 panorama where you see what it actually looks like, and then we show you a 3D recreation of that very detailed shrine for the woman that Jason and his team came across in 2012, and Jason writes about that experience in his book.
The mapping in GIS, you wanted us to kind of
Sure.
touch on that. Yeah, there's obviously a lot of data, and something that, you know, just from a creative standpoint, and Jason touched on, is that this is really just a spreadsheet. This is a publicly maintained database. You can look it up on the web, but it really doesn't do it justice. And so we wanted to kind of have the veracity of the data and you know, use a map really as like the interface for your experience, that you're going to these GPS coordinates, but at the same time have it be more pictorial. So you know, we're kind of in some ways actually like riffing and inspired by Google Maps, right, and Street View. So it's really about creating that kind of spatial relationship between the map and the on the ground view of where you're at.
You know, I think that's an interesting. You bring up sort of Google Maps and Street View. I think in a lot of ways, what you guys are doing, you're taking a couple of things that I think are often taken for granted. One being like Google Earth, right? We use it on a daily basis for mostly innocuous kinds of activities, right? To get to a place, to see a place from afar, and here you have it being deployed as a way to get close to something that's really, you know, ugly and devastating and horrific, and oftentimes unseen, right? These are places that that most people wouldn't want to go and visit, and you know, and so now you're taking this technology and allowing them to go and see these places that they would never really get a chance to see. Even on like, you know, even in Google Earth, you can zoom in on these places, but you wouldn't know, you know, it doesn't tell you on Google Earth, right? Like 3,400 migrants died in this area, right? You have to put that data in from someplace else. And so I think the fact that you're taking this technology and making us look at this thing is really fascinating. But also the fact that, and this kind of relates to the whole COVID thing, that, you know, you're taking the cell phone, this other thing that we take for granted and we don't necessarily use to engage with these difficult, you know, political topics, and say, okay, now we're going to take these two things, put them together, and allow you a window into these things that that most people, you know, don't know about, you know, maybe don't know how to get more information from, and here you are making it incredibly accessible in this really fascinating way. Which, you know, and the fact that you've said that, we've all had to pivot because of the temporary stall and all the physical exhibitions. I think in a lot of ways, much like the webinars that we're doing now, which have allowed us, I think, to be more inclusive and more global kind of in reach. The same thing with this experience now is that you don't have to physically be there, and you can engage with this topic in all kinds of ways, and you can engage with it long after these exhibitions have closed. So I think that there's just two kind of really fascinating things going on here about accessibility.
Yeah, it's kind of a blessing. A lot of those things. I think we all have more gratitude for things we took for granted before. But I do think the ability for this to be just loaded on the web is a huge benefit on the whole. And COVID drove us to really have to make that choice and that pivot. But I wouldn't go back. I'm a big believer and evangelizer that the web is the ultimate end platform. Nothing should be, siphoned off or siloed. It really is the most egalitarian place where we can host this type of work. So I'm excited we got to that point, and that, as Alvaro said, there are limitations to it, but we have the ability to deploy this on any device in your pocket. It's a cool moment.
So we've got some other questions here. Is one about, did we encounter any problems with border officials when gathering location images? I'm trying to remember. I don't think we did.
No, we definitely hopped some fences that we weren't supposed to, and pulled up some barbed wire to get to where we had to go. But I don't think we explicitly did.
Yeah, I think generally we didn't face anything direct, but it was my first time spending a lot of time there, and just seeing how militarized it was a bit shocking. But it's just so vast, so no one ever really came up to us. What else did I want to say about that? Yeah, I don't know. It's just very militarized. They're really everywhere, and they're constantly driving by. And obviously, we have to cross some checkpoints to get to the town and some of our filming locations.
Yeah, we didn't pull out cameras, directly in front of those checkpoints. I imagine would have had a conversation. But as Alvaro said, it is, highly populated with different Border Patrol agents, and it's also just such a huge place. So we didn't. But I don't know, Jason, do you have any other stories related to this that are pertinent, or in your 10 years on the border, what's the word?
Oh yeah, it's terrible. I've had many horrific experiences with the Border Patrol. Most of them are on a, it's the day-to-day kind of harassment, and that can be whether or not it's at a checkpoint and you get a DWB, a driving while brown, or just the general suspicion that one has for folks who are there walking around in the desert. But that's something that's been going on for over 2 decades, and it's something that's experienced on a daily basis by locals in places like Aravaca who basically live in an occupied militarized zone where they're constantly having to prove their citizenship and explain where they're coming and where they're going, and so it's I think part of what people don't really get from any of this is that not only is there's this high number of deaths that are happening, but it's also a place where we spend billions of dollars on surveillance equipment that for the most part doesn't work, does kill lots of people, but really does not stop the flow of undocumented migration, nor has it been very effective at stopping terrorism, as we oftentimes post 9/11 conflate border security. We conflate undocumented migration with terrorism as a way to justify this high level of spending, but I think we oftentimes don't get that kind of side of it, and that's partly because the Border Patrol doesn't want us taking pictures and making 3D scans of checkpoints and towers and that kind of stuff. But anyone that has been down there knows that it's everywhere, and it's really inescapable. And because of that heavy presence, you're of course going to experience harassment, even if you are a white U.S. citizen. I think everybody down there, one form or another, has issues with the Border Patrol.
I want to add, because I just always think about this anecdote. There's so many things that are violent about the border, whether it's the policies or the actual trek or the terrain, but in some of the human elements that make it violent. Of course, there's Border Patrol, but we also came across a water drop by some humanitarian group, but all the water bottles had been slashed. We don't know if it was by Border Patrol or by some militia group, but it just felt very violent that people were ready to deprive folks that had walked to get to that point, I don't know, 20, 30 miles across crazy mountains. So to slash water bottles really is just incredibly violent. So again, like, we didn't have direct encounter with border officials, but we did see just the violence of the border in many other ways.
Here's a question I'm going to put in the chat box for you guys. When it came to having to make so many decisions, technical, creative, and otherwise, and navigating through different circumstances to launch this experience, what would you all say personally grounded you through the entire process?
Oh boy. It's a lot to juggle for sure. And whoever asked this question, I feel like has made a project like this, because you know what it's like. But we went through a couple different ways of like creating almost like a game design document, or like a tome, that's like, okay, this is what we want to achieve. These are the scenes we know we want to have. But it's interactive, so it's not just like a linear story. You can't just like write a script. So we had these kind of this mind map, if you've seen it, or like a node map. And so oftentimes when we were kind of lost in the weeds and couldn't see, 2 feet in front of us, and we're trying to figure it out, we would, Alvaro and I would get together on a Sunday and get to our node map and just kind of be able to get through it. I don't know if that totally answers the personal part of the question, but from like a creative and technical standpoint, that really like kept us all on the same page and tracking like progress.
And I think what was kind of another angle to answer this question is that the highlights from the interviews were oftentimes very related to the highlights of the 3D models. So there are some 3D models that we wish we would have included, but unfortunately we just didn't have the interviews to back them up. But for the most part, I think we included some really compelling items.
And I'll just mention, like, literally to riff on the word grounded, like going out to the border to Arivaca, which we knew was kind of like a landmark and something that we were working towards. And then having that experience out on, on borderlands, on occupied territories out there, and seeing just like the immediacy of the issue down there. We would go to some of these resting points and some of these spots you'll see in the experience, and it felt like someone was there 5 minutes ago. There was a water bottle half full with electrolytes that had been placed there, in the last couple of days. It's hard to tell, but just having that sense of this issue and this crisis and the things that migrants go through in these places on our U.S.-Mexico border are so, kind of hidden from daily public view. And so when we came back, which was about 11 months ago now, I think for the last 11 months, that experience has really just stuck with me and kind of guided the vision in terms of, this is really important to get out. And this is something that we can use these tools to get there, to kind of recreate that feeling. So I think that's really kind of kept us going.
And I would just add in general, I think that the stuff that the Undocumented Immigration Project does, and all of the collaborations that we have, I mean, there's always just a lot of conversations about what are we doing, why are we doing it, is this going to be okay, how are we going to feel about this in a year, how do, let's take a step back, let's look at it from the perspective of a border crosser or perspective of, someone on the street. What are the different ways in which people are going to engage with this stuff? I think one of the things that all of us have worked really hard is to maintain that conversation constantly. And I think for me, it's always a work in progress. It's, we can always be better. We can always be more sensitive. We can always include more voices. And I think that's what I think grounds a lot of the work. It also makes it incredibly frustrating because I'm always like, I feel like we're on the verge of screwing up something. But in a lot of ways that's good because I think it keeps us on our toes and not feeling overly confident about, the representation of other people's experiences. Before I get to this question about Biden and Harris, so like you guys got to spend time with like Fernando, interviewing him about his experiences. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I've interviewed a lot of people, and this was unlike any other interview I've ever been a part of. Oftentimes it's very difficult. You have to ask a lot of questions. You kind of have to like warm up a little bit. There's so many circumstances that just make it like very difficult. But with Fernando, I think we gave like one or two questions, but he just went off for like an hour. And it was really amazing to see. He just had so many stories. He was so eager to share them. He is an amazing storyteller. In many ways, we could have made this whole experience about just his journey. And we actually, his chapter is maybe on the shorter end because his whole border crossing experience really, it started back in Ecuador. Like the moment of him crossing the border was just a tiny percentage of what he went through. Really, the bulk of it and the struggles and hurdles that he came across came way before he even reached the border.
And I'll just mention something interesting about that interview. It was actually 2 hours long, and it's an interesting dynamic. There was this annoying, really bright light, and so we turned off the lights in the interview, and we were sitting in this small sound booth, and it was almost like the whole world faded away, and he was like telling the story like someone would over like a campfire or something, just like totally, just painting this just odyssey that he went through, and it was like one of the more unique and just like imprinted stories that have ever been told on my mind. And so I do urge you to also read Jason's book, Land of Open Graves. He has some really detailed chapters that go into Fernando's story, and it's something I'll definitely never forget.
Yeah, and also people want to hear more from Fernando. You can listen to episode 3 of Radiolab's Border Trilogy, where he talks more about his experiences, and for me, it's just amazing to be able to pass the mic to those people themselves, so that they can actually tell their own stories in their own voices. And I think that that's such an important thing. And I hope that we do get to a point where people can feel more empowered to tell these stories. I think Fernando is he's a rare bird in that, he's really confident and and wants to be heard, and really doesn't have, he's not afraid, and I think it's a real testament to his character. Whereas with other folks, it's a difficult subject, both personally and also because people are afraid to talk about the things that have happened to them for fear of deportation or something else. But I am hoping that through these kinds of activities and increasing people's ability to engage directly with people's faces and with their voices, that we can begin to create new types of empathy around these experiences, and to realize that that these folks, Fernando, his story is harrowing, but it's not a unique story, unfortunately. I mean, millions of people have gone through similar things, and we just never really get the chance to hear or see those folks tell those stories. So we're getting low on time here. I'm going to do maybe one or two more questions here. We do have a question here about, it says here, does the election of Biden and Harris and blue shifts in Congress give you hope for border policy reform, or does the continuity in the policy, regardless of who is in the White House, temper your enthusiasm? I will pass the mic to you guys. What are you thinking? How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, well, speaking for myself, short answer, no, I don't have hope. I think
Damn you.
what I do have hope for is that things are going to slow down, and that's pretty important. That maybe asylum, the border wall is not going to it's not going to get completed. Some of the militarization that was already taking place is maybe going to slow down or come to a halt, or that the asylum process is some of the executive actions will be taken back and rolled back. But I don't think that there's a whole lot to do to go back. I think that in many ways that's just really difficult, and I don't think that he'll have enough political power to do so.
I'll chime in on that. Yeah, I kind of share some of Alvaro's lack of hope. I don't think we should be naively hopeful by any means. I think history shows us that, Democratic presidents and, Congress people have voted in harsh border policies in the past, like in the 90s. I believe that was under the Clinton administration. So I do think it's important for us to, not put all our eggs in, we have a blue or red government, and so therefore border policy is better or worse. I think, whatever your political affiliation is, if you believe in this, you should really, voice your concern and push your Congress people to take, action and find alternatives to a wall, which we all know, or I personally don't think has a great effect on, solving the humanitarian crisis. So I think, if you're a liberal, it's something that's really important to know, that we're not absolved of the issue just because we elect Democratic politicians. I think it's really important that people push for alternatives to the current kind of prevention through deterrence paradigm that we're in. It's saddening to see that Trump is trying to finish the wall as fast as he can. I think, again, to agree with Alvaro, that will slow down, but I really think it's going to take more kind of cognizance on the side of citizenry and advocates to make some change and pose alternatives.
And I think, Alvaro, you make a good point about this idea of political power. I think we have to think about, there's political power and then there's political will. And my concern is that you kick out the most racist president since Andrew Jackson out of the White House, and you put someone else in their place, and as long as they're not calling Mexicans rapists and trying to build this stupid wall, they somehow seem more reasonable or rational. But we have to remember that Biden is part of an administration that deported more people than than any previous president, and I worry that we will go back to how things were. There might be a few bones thrown, important ones. I mean, I think just the the restoration of temporary protective status. I hope bringing back, saving DACA. I mean, those are of course huge, important, hugely important things to do, but that can't be the end of it. We can't just stop there and say, okay, now things are fine. Let's just go back to how it was in the aughts. I think we have to push, and partly because it's not a system that is, as far as I'm concerned, there's no reforming these systems. They are fundamentally broken, and they are so corrupt and destructive that putting them back to how they were under Obama doesn't make me feel good at all. I mean, I was pissed off then, and then now we've just swung in such a we've swung in a far away from that. But in some ways, we've just made those things that were invisible visible. And I worry that they might just now become invisible again, like they were under the Obama administration. And people will think, oh, well, now as long as babies aren't in cages, things are good. So I think that the energy that people had to elect Biden and Harris has to be then now maintained into asking for real change. But I don't think that we can be complacent at all. I'm not confident that Biden's going to come into the next day and say, okay, let's completely rethink Homeland Security and prevention through deterrence. I think those things could just keep going as long as no one's making a big stink about them. So we got time for one more question here. This is about Mexico's role in asylum related to the Biden administration. And I'll just tackle that. You guys chime in if you want. I think it's important to understand that Mexico, since Obama, has been playing a big part in the slowing down or the stopping of Central American migration. So in 2014, Mexico launched Plan Frontera Sur, a border policy that was supposedly designed to protect the human rights of Central American migrants, but really it was a U.S.-backed, U.S.-supported immigration enforcement program that has led to the mass deportation of Central American migrants, a spike in detention centers in Mexico, a spike in border agents on the ground, and subsequently a spike in corruption, as well as cartels now trying to and transnational gangs trying to capitalize on the movement of Central Americans. So Mexico very much is part of this big system, and Trump, of course, has been exploiting that with the creation of camps and the suspension of TPS and the Wait in Mexico programs. So Mexico right now, their hands are quite dirty, and they have become very much a second border for the United States. And I'm not sure we'll see what the Biden administration does. I mean, we're all kind of just waiting to see what's going to happen. I think it's too soon to know about any of this stuff.
My quick addition to that is that in many ways it could be scarier because the collaboration over the past 4 years has been very confrontational. So now that there's probably going to be a good amount of collaboration, it just may make them more efficient.
No. Do you guys have any last closing comments?
Yeah, so if you check out the experience and you like it, keep in mind that Alex and I are not the coders and are not the ones really making the technology pop. That's definitely hats off to Shar, who's our coder and who's been a total trooper throughout all of this. She squashed so many bugs, and they were just really amazing to work with. So when you tip your hat to us, please extend it to them as well.
Yeah, thank you to everybody. We really appreciate it. Please feel free to share it with your friends, family. I hope this sparks conversations over the holidays or with people around you. I think that's really what we can hope for. So feel free to reach out to us too. Like if you have any questions or ideas for where it could be shown or ways it could be used. It's really now in the public, and that's where it belongs. So thanks to all the support.
And Jason, I quickly want to add just thank you and to you and the team for really providing us institutional knowledge. I think if we had just gone to the border ourselves and run around, it just wouldn't have been the right way to do it. So really the institutional knowledge and support was really invaluable. So thank you for that.
It's been really wonderful working with you guys. This is not the end. I think hopefully it's just the beginning. And just a couple of housekeeping points here. Episode 4 of this webinar will happen January 27th of next year. Hopefully by then we won't have a we will have our president will have evicted the squatters who are currently living there. We will be doing an interview between me and author and musician Willie Vlaughton. He is the writer of books such as Lean on Pete and Motel Life, both of which are major motion pictures. He's also the lead singer of the Portland, Oregon-based Americana band Richmond Fontaine. My buddy Willie and I will probably be drinking some beers and talking about the ways in which he has been trying to represent things like racism, the experiences of people of color in these exclusionary spaces, both in music and in film. So please join us for that. If you want more information about the Undocumented Migration Project, please visit our website, undocumentedmigrationproject.org. From there, you can also get information about our global exhibition, Hostile Terrain 94, including the many locations, the 130 plus shows that will be happening next year, which you can learn about and find out ways for you to get involved. We are currently doing what's called a Moment of Global Remembrance. It's a digital initiative where we are looking for 3,400 volunteers to record themselves reading, either making audio or video recordings of themselves reading out the names of the dead. And we will be using those for both physical and virtual exhibitions. So if you're interested in that, please see our website. And finally, yesterday was Giving Tuesday. We are coming towards the end of the year. If you are looking to make a tax-deductible donation to support a worthy cause, please consider donating to the Undocumented Migration Project. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so your donation is tax-deductible, and your gift can help us support programs and projects like the virtual experience, as well as helping to bring physical exhibitions to our hosting partners in places like Latin America and parts of Africa. So check it out. Our websites. Also, thank you so much for being with us today. And once again, thank you, Alex and Alvaro, for all your hard work and for being with us today. Take care.